My name again, Rosalind Young Daniels, President and founder of Black Health Matters. I am so pleased to have Gerren Wilson with us today, who's going to speak about advancing clinical trial participation. So I have had the fortune of knowing Gerren for more than 3 years, back when Black Health Matters was doing summits in the basements of churches. Gerren would come, sit, be with us, and share information and support the programs that we've been doing. So we thank you for that, Gerren. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Gerren. He is a rising star in the pharmaceutical business, in community activism, you name it. But everything that has to do with the advancement of people in a positive way, Gerren is about that. Gerren is a clinical pharmacist and award-winning biotechnology enterprise leader who holds a deep understanding of patient care, healthcare disparities, and biotech enterprise leadership from various roles across the healthcare industry. Gerren comes to us from Genentech, where he's held numerous roles, increasing in responsibility in managed care strategy, marketing, and government affairs. Gerren currently leads inclusion strategy and partnering within Genentech's Chief Diversity Office. In this role, he's responsible for leading the design and activation of Genentech's diversity and inclusion strategy to, to fostering belonging, advanced inclusive research, and health equity, and transforming society. Gerren is the recipient of numerous awards for collaboration, innovation, and ability to deliver value to patients. In 2019, Gerren received a distinction as being by Business Insider as being one of the top 30 leaders in the U.S. under 40 who are transforming U.S. healthcare. Gerren is a proud 15-year member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. He received his PharmD from Massachusetts College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences and holds a bachelor's degree from Morehouse College. Now, Gerren has some new information to share because he's been tapped for a bigger role at Genentech. So why don't you share what that is, Gerren?
Well, thank you for that really, really warm introduction, Rosalind. I have been a fan and an admirer of you and your work for quite some time. 3 years ago, in those basements of the churches in Harlem, to now, platforms all around the country bringing this message and this very important area of focus to Black and Brown people all over the country in the health equity moment. So a big, resounding applause for you and what you've built up with Black Health Matters. And I'm just proud to be on the platform. And I'll highlight two things. So that acknowledgement, that award that you mentioned, the Business Insiders, was actually something that you had something to do with in some of those earlier conversations. So I thank you for your support and endorsing me in that way and kind of putting things in motion for that. So you alluded to a new role within the organization. So I am now stepping into a new role at Genentech. Genentech is a biotechnology company. We make medicine for a whole host of serious illnesses, and the new role that I'm stepping into is called a life cycle leader. And basically, what that means is the shorthand is I'm the CEO of a molecule or a medicine or a molecule that's being studied in research for gastroimmunology conditions. And hopefully, we hope it becomes a medicine. But before it becomes a medicine, we have to first do the research and development, which is part of the topic that we'll talk about today. And so it's making sure that we kind of oversee those research programs, oversee our interactions with health authorities. Most relevant here is the FDA, present the evidence and the information that they can reflect upon, and make sure that it's both safe and effective for people to use. And if they give it the nod, then it'll turn into a medicine, and then we can start to bring that medicine to patients. So, in this new capacity, I'll sit over that system and hopefully bring some new product to patients here in the foreseeable future. So that's the new role.
That's amazing. God bless. And we know that, everyone will benefit from listening to Gerren's words today.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So thank you, Rosalind. And as you were reading my bio, it actually jumped out to me that I need to update that bio because I'm now actually a 20-year member of this glorious fraternity that I'm so honored to be a part of and be able to address the brothers who are tuning in to this particular session today. So yeah, I am an initiate Grand Pi chapter, Kappa Alpha Psi, 2001. This is both my lines. So shout out to Odyssey. It's our 20-year anniversary, and it is my chapter's 100th year anniversary this year. So a lot of milestones for us to celebrate, and it is a pleasure to both reflect upon that, and then also reflect upon this topic, which I hope to plant some seeds on with members tuning in today, which is about clinical trials and health equity, this broader concept of health equity. So I'm just going to pull up some slides to help set up and structure this conversation. So as Rosalind mentioned, I sit at Genentech, and over the past year and a half, 2 years, I've actually worked out of our chief diversity office, really focused on the way we think about diversity and inclusion in our organization. And we've been very intentional about being very broad, thorough, and comprehensive about how we ensure that these principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion are embedded in everything our company does. We sit within the biotechnology industry, and our company also sits within the pharmaceutical industry, which has, a huge impact and influence on how healthcare and health services are delivered across this country. And it's $800 billion industry. So significant resources, significant investments that sit within companies like a Genentech and companies like mine to really ensure that we are trying to bring the best to patients and ensure that all patients have access to the best that healthcare has to offer. And over the past 3 years, I've actually really been focused on making sure that our community has access to the best that healthcare has to offer. That Black and Brown people who have historically been underrepresented in the clinical research setting due to various reasons, we haven't been active in that setting at the rates that other populations have been active in that setting. And as a result, our health outcomes for cancer, neurological diseases, a variety of issues, there are disparities. And, if we are diagnosed and what our prognosis is, and if another patient from European ancestry is diagnosed and what their potential prognosis might be. And some of that has to do with social determinants of health, but a lot of it also has to do with our communities being invited to participate at the center and at the forefront of innovation. And that's really what my charge has been over the past few years, is being almost, evangelizing, being an ambassador, being a voice to ensure that we start to have a different conversation in our households, in our communities, at church, within the fraternity, within our sororities, in all the places where we talk about healthcare, health and well-being, that we start talking about clinical research in a different way, because this is truly the forefront of medicine. And this is what will unlock the future of healthcare, which we'll talk about in a bit. So that's a bit of my preamble, just getting this started. I think, my main message here is I just want to plant some seeds in your mind around where we are in healthcare today, where we're headed, and what type of conversations do we need to talk about at home so that we, all can advocate for ourselves and advocate for our loved ones differently, so that we can, cure diseases when we get diagnosed with them, and we put ourselves on the best path for a healthy community. So that's fundamentally my charge here. So let's get into it. Where is healthcare at? And I think the first thing to probably highlight is just the face of disease is changing. I think this is a snapshot of what the next 20 years will generally look like across some of the most serious illnesses that people are being diagnosed with, that have the potential of taking our loved ones away from us, but that we also have the real possibility of curing. And we'll talk a little bit about what that innovation looks like. But if you look at 2030, new cancer cases will increase by over 80% in low-income countries. By 2040, take that out another 20 years, over half the US patients living with Alzheimer's disease will be Black or Hispanic. If this current run rate continues, that would devastate our community. So we have to do something differently about what that might mean and do different now. By 2045, if you look at US breast cancer cases, they're going to increase significantly across populations that matter closely and matter most to us: Black, Hispanic, Asian Pacific Islander. We're seeing increases across white patient populations. So breast cancer cases are on the rise. And then if you think about global, implications of diseases that we care about, Alzheimer's diseases in China will quadruple and account for over half the patients worldwide. So I think really what this tells us is that where disease is showing up and who it shows up in is changing. And for companies and for doctors who are focused on trying to improve the trajectory of the course of disease and create conditions where we can heal and help people beat disease, we need to understand where disease is going, who's going to be impacted by it, and what does it mean for us to treat those patients and do things differently. And that's fundamentally the charge across all of the healthcare industry. And you couple that with just the fact that we are in a time where, we are at a transformational moment in healthcare. If you just think about the power of the technology that we are all walking around with us, that probably helped you get to Phoenix for the grand chapter meeting, our cell phone, our Apple Watches, all of these technologies, the computing power within our phones are tremendous. The computing power that's at the disposal of the research community and at the use of our physicians and clinical teams is also incredibly powerful. So we have this ability to really understand disease at a deep level. We have people who are more empowered and educated than ever before. We have tools and devices that help us monitor our ailments more closely than we've ever been able to do before. We can send that information into our medical team so that they have a better understanding of each individual's experience with disease. All of these conditions mean that we can be smarter and more effective at treating disease. But we have to know that that is upon us and know that we have that opportunity and be a part of it and be a part of ensuring that our parents and our grandparents, our aunts and uncles, brothers in the frat and others know that we are at this moment where healthcare and the future of healthcare is very promising, but we have to participate in a certain way to ensure we have access to the best that healthcare has to offer. And so I highlight this slide that you see now, which really starts to bring this concept to life. You may hear about it and you may have heard about it in other settings, this notion of precision medicine, personalized healthcare. That is the forefront of medicine that we are at right now. And it really just takes all of these different feeds of information that are usually generated when someone is diagnosed with a serious condition. We start collecting data. That data and that information is evaluated by your doctor and your nurse and your clinical teams. And that is how we treat disease. And we use all these different modalities: genomic information, just your body's makeup. And then we look at the genomics of various cancers. If a patient's diagnosed with prostate cancer, we'll look at the actual tumor and see what is the genetic makeup of that tumor. We compare it to the genetic makeup of a person, and that's how treatment decisions are being made. We look at what's your history of illness and disease. What kind of information can we get from digital tools? Very advanced, sophisticated diagnostic techniques that can look at it and can look at your body and tell a healthy cell from a cell that potentially is cancerous. All of these tools are at the disposal that we're using these things right now, and they're incredibly powerful and they are incredibly effective at helping us provide better care for patients. Now, what typically tends to happen though is that a lot of the best technologies are housed within clinical trial environments, clinical research environments at great hospitals and community hospitals that the pharmaceutical and biotech industry partners with to understand health and conditions and test questions, scientific questions. And if you look at the top of this continuum, you see this progression of a very blurry vision, a very blurry image to that of a high resolution image of a person. What we are really proving right now through personalized healthcare experiments is that we can get to a high resolution view of every individual patient and their experience with disease. But what you see on the bottom is that for members of this fraternity, members of the African American and the Latino community, those communities that have not been as active in the clinical research setting, our ability to get to that higher resolution view of our communities are compromised by the fact that our data is not well reflected in the environment that is designing personalized healthcare tools and solutions. And that's something that we have to start changing. And we change that by asking questions of our doctors and being more actively participating in that kind of conversation where clinical research may be a consideration. If someone in my family is diagnosed with cancer, a clinical trial is going to be one of the top 3 to 5 things I talk about with my doctor and that person's care team. It's fundamentally critically important that we think differently about this and we act differently and we start talking about this differently in our homes so that we can benefit from this high resolution view that we're proving now using all of those modalities and computing power and machine learning technologies that are really unlocking a lot of potential in healthcare. So that's the charge. This is the issue, and this is what we're trying to solve for. So I will just kind of use that as a backdrop to say, you've probably been hearing about healthcare disparities and health equity. It has been a topic, it has been a feature element of this summit and something that we are all talking about in healthcare. The reason we talk about it is a variety of different reasons. I think the pandemic was a big catalyzer. The reason we saw, the fact that we saw, African American and Latino patients dying at a much higher rate than patients of European ancestry was and is very troubling, and something that I think really opened up the national consciousness to healthcare disparities and the notion of health equity. And it's also just expensive to society. If you look at the bottom, over $230 billion in direct medical care costs are associated with the fact that if 2 people are diagnosed with disease, they may have a very different experience with that disease, and one person may die sooner than the other. And that's something that we can't, as much as we know about medicine, as much as we know about humans' experience with disease, this is something we have to change. I think it's fundamental to ensuring that all people benefit from the best that healthcare has to offer. We have to change that. There's an economic incentive for us to do it, but at the end of the day, this is a moral imperative. This is just making sure that we all have access to the best, that those of us in this fraternity have access to the best, and those that we care deeply about also have access to the best. If you look at the top of this slide, you see that there's multiple different reasons why we have healthcare disparities. I think at the core of it, we have to call out structural and systemic racism have created an imbalance in the lived experience for people that live in the US. And then those, kind of imbalances are, kind of cascade through the social determinants and structural factors that you see on the left, all the way to the patient experience, patient and caregiver experience that you see on the far right. That whole continuum, there are issues and things that we are now targeting and that we are focusing on to start to solve this issue of healthcare disparities and really advance health equity. So what does this mean? That's kind of the pretext to get into what is industry doing about it. And I'll focus on what we're doing about it at Genentech. And really, I want to do this because I want to let all of us know where Genentech is and where the pharmaceutical industry is, because it's creating opportunities for all of us to benefit from. There's opportunities for us to improve our health, but there's also business opportunities for those of you that are close to or tied to this industry or considering, being an entrepreneur in healthcare. There's a lot of opportunity right now, so I encourage folks to start to pay attention and take advantage of it. If you look at just our diversity and inclusion commitments at Genentech, these are split across 3 areas of focus. Foster belonging really is just what kind of company do we want to have? What culture are we trying to set for others? And then what is the composition of the company that we have? We need more Black and Latino talent helping to shape our scientific agenda and helping, work in a variety of roles across our organization, just to ensure that we are, innovating at the highest level that we can possibly be, and that we're as creative and as dynamic as we can be in this business environment, because the world is changing and we need to make sure that we reflect the diversity of the world around us. So you see those commitments on the left, really the type of company that we want to deliver. As you look at the middle column, this is the focus of this talk, which is advancing inclusive research and health equity. Really, our charge to our organization is that any program that we are doing research in, we should first look at the patients that experience that disease and ask ourselves, what type of research do we need to do to ensure that we understand what all of our patients experience, how they experience that disease, and if this medicine works for them. That's the charge to our research and development teams. And then an overarching mission for our organization is to establish our company as the leader and partner of choice in advancing health equity. talking, showing up in forums like this, talking about the fact that, there are healthcare disparities that exist. People are dying at higher rates. People aren't getting the quality of care that they deserve and that they need. And as a result, that is impacting our communities and it's impacting patients negatively. And we need to do something about it. So we need to show up and figure out what's going on, listen to people, and then invest where we can to drive some change. And then, our final commitment is really transforming society. I think it's ensuring that our commitment to diversity and inclusion is showing up in all of our business decisions. It's showing up in the kind of company that we create, but then it's also being transferred externally. I mentioned at the top that our industry has a lot of significant economic resources at our disposal. And, if we are ensuring that we are delivering those resources to diverse suppliers, our attempt to do that is to annually commit $1 billion of our external spend to minority-owned businesses, Black-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, diverse supplier-owned businesses, to transform economic opportunities across communities by delivering more resources into communities. So we're doing it in that manner. We're asking all of our suppliers to share their diversity and inclusion commitments to ensure that we create a multiplier effect. And then we need to create opportunities for more people like members of this frat who are physicians and nurses and physicians and pharmacists and healthcare experts. We need to make sure that we are really creating a future of healthcare and a profession that also truly resembles the diversity of the world around us. And so we're going to do that through investments in education. So this is how we think about diversity and inclusion. Here's how it's coming to life, just to give some tangible examples for those out here that are close to in this space and looking for some, from some ideas. As it relates to ensuring that we are partnering different to address health equity and advance health equity, we have built up an alliance model that we've recently launched, which we hope to grow over time. But really the core intention of this alliance model is to work with healthcare institutions in communities that have diverse patients that surround those communities. And for us to collaborate closely with these partners to ensure that patients understand what their treatment options are, understand what clinical research is all about, if they need to consider that under a serious diagnosis, that they understand that they're supported and they're protected, and to ensure that we are working with the experts that have real solutions in their local geographies, and that we are providing more resources and support and scale to powerful work that's happening all across the country. And we're doing it through our Advancing Inclusive Research Site Alliance model. We have 4 inaugural partners that we're going to work with. We're going to grow this network over time. And this is going to be the source of our investment in health equity. We're going to work with these research sites to ensure that they have what they need to continue to do the work that they're doing. And this is the type of investment that the pharmaceutical industry needs to do at scale to ensure that we really bend the needle on this challenge that's persisted for far too long. And we also realize that in order to do that, we got to build trust. One way we build trust is what I just talked about, that site alliance model. But another important way that we build trust is just investing in the talent pipeline that comes into the healthcare industry, doing it from kindergarten through a career in healthcare. And that's the way we are thinking about it. So we have a lot of our charitable giving is now going into targeted efforts across kindergarten to senior and high school. And then we're really dialing up the scholarship opportunity for students who may be considering careers in healthcare, physicians, scientists, other healthcare professionals. There's real opportunity right now. And this is something that Genentech is doing. This is something that the pharmaceutical industry is doing at large. I sit on a council with PharmD, which is our industry trade association. And this is one of the trade association's core priorities that we're working across our industry. So tremendous opportunity for opportunities in healthcare now. So let our family members know the money is going to be out there. The opportunity is going to be out there. So start to hold us accountable, hold our industry accountable, and look for it and take advantage. Because fundamentally, the future never just happened. It was created. I really appreciate this quote from our sister, Mae Jemison, physician and astronaut. That's what we are all doing right now. We're doing it by showing up to these type of conversations. We're doing it by asking questions. And we're doing it by, if you are in a position to influence, priorities and influence, what happens and transpires across healthcare, leaning in and taking that opportunity to do just that. It's something that I've been a part of. It's been some of the most rewarding work of my career, and something I will continue to do as I go forward. And so we ask all of you to think about this. So with that, I'm going to wrap, because I do want to take a look at some of the questions that I think have come through in the chat, and just make sure that we are being responsive. So give me just a second to kind of scan through this. Okay, so I'll actually start at the top. This is coming from a gentleman. This is Mr. Tall. I'm not going to make any kind of assumption on who this is, but the question is, how do you intend to get the word to people that your research is safe? I think that is the fundamental question to focus on. Number one, I think it's just showing up in different places and being a representative of industry, and just talking about what I have observed and what I've come to know. I think, having people who are on the inside, who understand all the protocol that has been put in place to ensure patient safety, the structure and how we conduct and support patients in that environment is incredibly comprehensive. I had a patient who had been a part of a clinical trial tell me once before that if she had asked me, have you ever rode in a Rolls Royce? And I told her no. And she said that being in a clinical trial is like being in the Rolls Royce of medical care. You have, top medical teams evaluating your case. You have, people checking in on you more frequently than they would typically check in on you if, say care is being delivered in the community setting. You have doctors kind of reviewing the behavior of other doctors who are treating you. So you have an entire system that is put in place that's designed to make sure patients are safe. And anything that we may observe in that setting is flagged immediately and is addressed. That's the fundamental rule. And these principles have been codified across industry in research and development practices that govern how research is conducted and what the FDA ultimately holds our industry accountable for. So the environment is incredibly safe. If you look at the preponderance of the data, say you get diagnosed with cancer, it's one of those conditions that, resoundingly the evidence is very clear on this. Patients that have been evaluated and been, participating in a clinical research environment achieve better outcomes with their diagnosis. And that has been proven time and time again. So I think we have to get this word out, and we have to have trusted messengers who are able to deliver this message in a way that people can receive it. But the environment in and of itself is very, very safe. So I'm going to kind of take this question. Given the disproportionate effects of cancer on African-American men and women, personalized medicine has influenced clinical trials, and it underscores the importance of early detection, screening, blood work, and more targeted ways of preventing cancer. As clinical trials become available, personalized medicine and precision public health will start to tailor treatments unique to individuals' own genetic history and information. This is a very informed question, but this person is right. This is where we are. Can you please speak to the potential role of precision medicine and biobanks in clinical trials? So absolutely. Really what's kind of where we need to engage more, and by we, I mean the Black community, the Latino community, is really the very end of that question. It's all throughout that question, but in the biobanks that you're alluding to, that are usually part of the assessments that are done within clinical trials. We want to know what is the genetic ancestry or the genetic makeup of the people that participate in the trials. And we also want to know in the cancer setting, what is the genetic makeup of cancer? What is the genetic makeup of the tumor that people are dealing with? And it is through evaluating the genetic makeup of the tumor and the genetic makeup of the person that allows us to create precision therapies that just hit the cancer cell and leave the other healthy cells undisturbed. Now, this is a evolution of care. If you go back 30, 40 years, chemotherapy was the mainstay. It's still the mainstay. It's still the fundamental baseline of treatment. But what that process does is because cancer is just a rapidly abnormal division of cells, it stops all rapidly dividing cells. And so you get some of the, and that's both healthy and living cells. So any cell that rapidly divides could be impacted by chemotherapy. Where we really want to take, and where where care is moving towards, is trying to minimize that effect, trying to minimize the kind of blanket approach killing all rapidly dividing cells, which has been incredibly effective, and just be more targeted. Just kill the rapidly dividing cancer cell and leave the other cells untouched. So these biobanks, which this person is alluding to, is really where we get a better understanding of the biology of people of African ancestry, people of Latin ancestry, people of Asian ancestry. We get a more robust understanding of what our biology is. We have a very robust understanding of people of European ancestry because they've been participating in clinical trials. We need to change that for other patient groups so that we can start to compare it against what we understand about cancer. We can understand cancer better and we can make better treatments. Let me do a quick time check because I think I have I am at the time. Maybe I'll try to get one quick question in here and then we can wrap it up. Let's see, how do you really know who to trust? That's just a general question. And I can appreciate that question because I think there have been conditions of distrust and mistrust. So I say distrust meaning that something happened that caused us to not trust this system that we are in. I can't say, I can't give you a silver bullet on that, but I can say that just watch the companies that continue to show up in these type of spaces that are sponsoring these events. We are starting to put our money where our mouth is. Our chief diversity office at Genentech, powerful force in this industry, Quita Highsmith says, and she's told me this time and time again, you budget what you value. And so the companies that are budgeting things, they're budgeting being here, budgeting trying to change the health outcomes of communities of color. You can trust that they value these communities. We value our communities, that we are invested. And that is important. And this is not something that we're doing just to solve some immediate objective. This is something that we are doing because, as I said, this is a moral imperative, but it's also a scientific imperative. Like the future of personalized healthcare requires it. And so you're starting to see more investment and a more focus taken there. But safety is at the underlying kind of premise of all of this. Watch who's showing up, watch who they look like. Hopefully some of this messaging resonates because, we're in discussion with one another. But I would say those are some of the conditions that we start to think about when it comes to trust and working with the Black Health Matters to go to churches and go to the places where we have these type of conversations and being willing to show up and answer questions and take, the good, the bad, and the ugly so we can work through this. And that's something that I've been committed to doing. I'll be committed to continue doing, even if it is from a slightly different perch. But that's where I think the trust can be earned over time. So with that, I will wrap up this session. I thank you all for showing up. I mentioned that, we can really change this. There's some of us that are passionate, that are committed, that are in this space, that are doing the good work. But if you show up to this type of conversation, that means you're connected and you're committed too. And so it's just each one, reach one, teach one, and let's keep this conversation going because I think it's the future of our community's health and well-being depends on it. And let's continue to just achieve in this endeavor and others. So to the bond, yo, and and hope you continue to enjoy another great summit. Thank you.